Guess who's back? Back again. The silver and gold is back. Welcome, everybody. We're back with episode 45 of the silver and gold. I'm Josh.
And I'm Mike.
And today we're going to be talking about actually a long list of topics. These have been like sort of stacking up for maybe the past couple weeks. But, breaking news today, we're going to be starting off with Brandon Aiyuk. Then we're going to be talking about the McCaffrey and Jennings extensions. Then we're going to talk about the Madden 25 cover, Darren Waller's retirement, the post-June 1st cap space, Maxx Crosby getting a raise, who should the Raiders re-sign, Dylan Parham, the Raiders secondary, and then we're going to be talking about Jim Otto, and if we have time at the end, we will go into a couple bonus topics. But for now, let's talk about what everybody's here for, based on the thumbnail, based on the title of the show, Brandon Aiyuk. So this has been going very viral right now in the NFL world because Brandon Aiyuk went on Instagram and he was on a FaceTime call with Jayden Daniels, the quarterback of the Washington Commanders. And I want to say Aiyuk and Jayden Daniels were teammates in college, if I'm not mistaken. And that's where like the whole rumors started circulating about Aiyuk going to the Raiders because he played, they both played for Antonio Pierce, and Jayden Daniels was also going to go to the Raiders. Obviously, it didn't play out that way in the draft, but let me pull up the video right now and let me share it with everybody. So this is Dove Kleiman reposting it. Hold on one second. That
Good old Dove Kleiman.
Good old Dove Kleiman, the infamous NFL news, I guess, regurgitator? Hold on. What's going on? There we go. All right, you can see it, right?
Yep.
Bro, look in the cam, bro. Look the cam.
He got me vlogging this shit.
Bro, what? They said they don't want me back. I swear.
Oh my.
Okay, so that's the clip. And hold on, the clip started playing again in the background. Brandon Aiyuk is clearly alluding to the 49ers not wanting him back. They have recently, it's been reported that they made an offer for Aiyuk for $26 million. And clearly Aiyuk thinks that he's worth more. Otherwise, they would have gotten the deal done. And I have to say, this situation, it makes sense. But then again, it doesn't. So I can see where both sides are coming from, where the 49ers, they already have a lot of money invested into their wide receiver room. They've got a lot of draft capital invested. And I mean, the really tricky part about this is Aiyuk has been that one player who has consistently really brought it to training camp every single year. And he's one of the players that you can argue has earned that contract from the 49ers. It's just a matter of the wide receiver market has been absolutely exploding this offseason, and every single week it seems like a brand new receiver gets more than $30 million per year. So it kind of seems like the Niners are shortchanging Aiyuk, but at the same time, it's like, how much can the 49ers afford to give to a wide receiver who is the fourth option in a run-first football team?
Fourth option?
Well, it's you've got George Kittle, you've got Deebo Samuel, you've got Christian McCaffrey in the passing game as well, and then you've got Brandon Aiyuk. I'd say Aiyuk is definitely their most efficient player on offense. Like when he does get the ball, I want to say he was like averaging something like 18 yards per reception, which is probably the most in the NFL.
Yeah. I guess the way I'd say I feel about it would be just because he's a wide receiver one, like I don't know if I'd say maybe you'd probably know better than me on the Niners, but I don't know if I'd say that Aiyuk is a lower target on like the target total. So like one McCaffrey, right? He gets the most carries, targets, whatever.
Yeah.
The offense. But I wouldn't put Kittle above Aiyuk. And then Debo's sort of the guy that's like, at least to me, it's like every other game, Aiyuk might get more targets this game, Debo this game, Kittle this game, right? It's like they kind of alternate who the second guy is, but at the end of the day, I think it just comes down to what play is called, and maybe they're all option 2A, 2B, 2C, But, we've had long talks about Aiyuk and Debo and even Kittle before, but as far as like the wide receiver market, I want to say the most recent wide receiver contract that was given out, I could be wrong here, was Jalen Waddle on a 3-year, $84.75 million deal, which comes out to about $28.25 million per year. So I think as far as the Niners, and what they're looking at, not only do you have to consider like, all right, are we willing to give that to Aiyuk because he's our wide receiver one, and hey, Waddle's good, but he's the Dolphins' number 2, And in my opinion, like Debo's not going to last forever. So if you want to lock a guy up, they have Debo for 2 more seasons this year, next year. But Aiyuk, he'll probably last longer than Debo, right? But the real question lies to me with Brock Purdy and his impending contract situation. And you have guys, if you want to pull it up on the Silver and Gold Twitter, the most recent tweet I think I sent you was not the most recent, but up towards the top is the highest paid QBs right now.
Hold on. I'm gonna need you to guide me right now. Highest paid QBs right now.
Yeah. It's gonna scroll up a bit. There it is. You see Jared Goff and keep going. Picture.
Oh, right here.
Yeah. I don't know if that's actually
dude.
Hey,
Twitter.
there we are.
Twitter doesn't let me minimize anymore. That's the issue that I was having when I was showing the Aiyuk video. It's like I guess I have to click on that specific thing instead of the top bar. Fix that, Elon. We're talking to you. Be better.
I feel like there's a quarterback or two missing. It's hard for me to believe that Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes aren't on this list, but these are also guys who recently got signed. Herbert, Joe Burrow, they broke the bank. They were the number 1 paid quarterback at the time that they signed. Lamar Jackson, right? Jalen Hurts. But the most recent one being Trevor Lawrence, $55 million per year. Here's my thing, and this wasn't a topic, but I just wanted to throw this in here. As far as the Brandon Aiyuk contract debacle, the Niners have to consider for this because all those guys, Jalen Hurts has gone to a Super Bowl, but he didn't win, right? Lamar Jackson, has he been to a Super Bowl yet?
No, he is not.
No, he went to the AFC Championship though, right?
He just lost the AFC Championship to the Chiefs.
Okay. But Jared Goff, he's been to a championship. Justin Herbert, maybe he's won a playoff game, maybe one. Joe Burrow, he's been to a Super Bowl. Trevor Lawrence, he's maybe won one playoff game, I think, against the Chargers. But none of these guys have won a Super Bowl. A couple of these guys have been to a Super Bowl. A couple of these guys have been to championships.
Yeah.
Brock Purdy hasn't won a Super Bowl, but he's been to more championship games than most of these guys on this list, right? And if this Niners team stays consistently in the championship, or hopefully they win a Super Bowl this year, how much, Purdy's worth more than all these guys at that rate, right? So how do you keep Aiyuk when you're re-signing, our next topic, right? When you're re-signing other guys, and then you have Aiyuk out here saying all these things like, oh, they don't want me, blah, blah, blah. I can see why he feels that way. I don't know what I mean, you said that they apparently offered him a $26 million per year.
Yeah, so I can pull that up, but I'm pretty sure that report comes from Mike Silver. But I saw NBC Sports posted about it. Yeah, see, Elon Musk, you got to fix this app. Let's see here. The latest. Oh, come on! Now it's got me scrolling there. All right. The latest contract offer to Brandon Aiyuk is reportedly in the $26 million per year range, and that's from NBC Sports Bay Area. So that's just a report. You know, obviously there's got to be some smoke to this fire here, but 26 million as opposed to a guy like Jalen Waddle, who I think we can both agree. I think Aiyuk is better than Jalen Waddle. I can see why Aiyuk wants more. And then the thing is like Aiyuk has missed minimal time. Jalen Waddle has missed a lot of time. And same thing with I guess the people who get paid on the 49ers versus the people who haven't gotten paid. Like we saw a couple years ago, the Niners traded DeForest Buckner and chose to keep Eric Armstead. Eric Armstead had that 1 year that was very good. DeForest Buckner was very good in every single year that he was on the team. He didn't miss a lot of time. And I mean, to Armstead's credit, I don't remember Armstead missing a lot of time until recently. He's dealing with the plantar fasciitis, and now he's gone. He's obviously in Jacksonville. But it looks like the 49ers kept the wrong guy, and the Niners are right now on the doorstep of making that same mistake again, in my opinion. If I were the 49ers, and I'm not, but if I were in the 49ers' shoes, I would make it an emphasis to keep Brandon Aiyuk and prioritize him over Deebo Samuel. Because Deebo Samuel, like you said earlier, you don't know how long he's going to last, and you were kind of alluding to how many years he's going to last. How many games before Deebo Samuel misses time? It happens, very often. Deebo Samuel is a good player. He's not one of the premier route runners in the league, but with the ball in his hands, Deebo Samuel is very good, one of the best, but he plays such a high risk, he has a high risk play style. And, the more physical you are in the NFL, the sooner it catches up with you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think at the end of the day, this is just a tricky situation for the Niners because, if that article's true, then they're trying, albeit they're not trying to break the bank, but either way, $26 million per year for a wide receiver is pretty tough. I don't remember what Deebo's making per year. I don't know if you know.
He's making around 28 per year. It's like somewhere between 26 and 28.
Yeah. In that case, I can see why Aiyuk is like, well, maybe they just don't want me. Now, granted, because I think Aiyuk, I agree. I think Ayuk's better. And I think, okay, Deebo is this cool jack of all trades sort of guy. He's not the best at route running, but you get him the ball, you might have a touchdown, right? But he's consistently a little bit more injured than Aiyuk. And I'd say Aiyuk is consistently better at route running. He probably has better hands. He just seems to be the more reliable receiver, right? And if they're not willing to, and Deebo's contract is from 2-3 years ago. If they're not able to pass that up for Aiyuk, who is younger than Deebo, it's it's pretty clear that they're not making the hardest effort to re-sign him. I think, in my opinion, maybe what they're trying to do is lowball him until they need to not lowball him, right? And if he accepts a lowball offer, awesome for you guys, right? But until then, they could just franchise tag him. And then worst come to worst, they let him leave. And by then, maybe Ricky Pearsall is a new number one receiver. They have a little backup option, but it's going to take a while to get there. I just think on the reverse aspect of this is, the way that Brandon Aiyuk is handling this. And, we remember how Deebo handled his contract situation. It was a lot of drama. It was a lot of going to social media and, expressing his frustrations. And I guess it's funny to me, like, from my perspective, it's like, I don't know what Brandon Aiyuk and his girlfriend or wife, whatever, think is going to come of them posting TikToks like this, other than just to swirl, like, rumors and hope for Commanders fans that Aiyuk will become Jaden Daniels' next top receiver.
I will tell you exactly what this does. What this does is it gets us talking, about the 49ers not paying Brandon Aiyuk, and it puts more pressure on the 49ers in order to get a deal done because the fans are unhappy. Brandon Aiyuk is a fan favorite player.
Mhm.
He's one of my favorite players. Maybe he's slid down the list a little bit with this, contract negotiation stuff because it's so tiring because
It's
it
tiring.
happens to, it's very tiring. It happens to so many players, but like right now, fans are maybe worried that they're about to lose on one of their, best receivers, and they are putting all this attention on the 49ers. Literally, not just Niners content creators were talking about this today. Dov Kleiman was posting about it. Ari Myrov was probably talking about it. Like, everybody was talking about it. So
Yep.
Aiyuk is succeeding in that, in probably what he was trying to accomplish, putting pressure on the 49ers. And the 49ers, what they can do is, they can up their offer a little bit, or, it sounds like from that, from the clip, the Niners are not prepared to keep Brandon Aiyuk back, or to bring him back. And
At the very
maybe,
least, they're not showing that they feel there is an importance to keeping him.
yeah. And also, I think what this does is it tells other teams, hey, I'm available. Call the 49ers. Trade for
Yep.
me right now.
Yep.
You can have a number one receiver right now. Trade for me.
Yep.
Yeah. And maybe the 49ers' interest is to just keep Brandon Aiyuk, have him play out his fifth-year option, and then franchise tag him 2 years in a row. And, I mean, what's Brandon Aiyuk going to do? Is he going to sit for 3 years? Nobody's going to pay him then.
Yeah, no, and we saw how that happened for, well, not 3 years, but for 1 year with Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah.
Just wasn't the same player, But, yeah, I mean, that was the next thing I was going to say is, like, where this seems to be headed is probably Aiyuk holding out. And, with how big the dreams are for this team right now, which is to win a Super Bowl, you can't have a player holding out going into the season. Like Chris Jones this past season, he held out into week 1. Maybe Aiyuk does the same thing. Maybe he waits until week 2 to come back. But what happened? I want to say, I'm not remembering correctly, at least, but I feel like the Chiefs got a deal done with Chris Jones like right after the week 1 game, like that weekend, and then he came back week 2 because he got a deal done.
Yeah,
I could be wrong.
That is what happened. And the 49ers also, Nick Bosa held out until right before week 1.
Yep.
And then, I mean, I really despise the way that the 49ers do business. Like, all right, if you're going to re-sign a guy, re-sign them sooner. Don't penny pinch them until the very final moment, because we're seeing right now the price for Aiyuk has gone up. The price has gone up because other receivers like Amon-Ra St. Brown has gotten signed to $30 million, contracts. Jalen Waddle is now a $28 million receiver, and Justin Jefferson is a $35 million receiver. That was not the case weeks ago.
Whew. Yeah, no,
that was not the case weeks ago.
Yep, and that's the main thing. Like, I agree with that. Like, trying to lowball a little bit isn't the worst thing in the world, but waiting as long as they consistently do to sign their players. This was the thing with other players. McCaffrey. Well, we'll get to that, but not really with McCaffrey. He's going to set the bar no matter what. But certain players, they wait and wait. And it's like, if you just sign them now, like, I don't know if they're eligible to re-sign Purdy yet, but if they wanted to, okay, they're not. Okay. Well, then forget it. But with Aiyuk, I know this has been a consistent complaint, and I feel like this has been the same thing with other players of, like, if they just didn't wait and just offered a good deal 2 months ago, they wouldn't be forced to pay an extra $2 million now that the bar has been set higher, So
maybe 26 million accounts for that extra 2 million that they were that they were willing to go up to, and now it has to be an additional 4 million on top of that for the offer to look enticing to Brandon Aiyuk.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, maybe a year ago, 26 million would have got it done. And this year it's like, I'm not settling for anything under 29, you know?
Yeah.
So,
And then another thing too that is going against the 49ers right now that not a lot of people are talking about, but it's on the back of my mind, and we've talked about this before, is the income tax. So Ayuk's going to sign this massive contract, and about half of it is going to go to the state of California. Whereas if Aiyuk goes somewhere else, like let's just say Jacksonville had traded for him, Aiyuk would be getting like the full contract.
yeah. Yeah.
So he would be paid almost double,
Yeah.
almost double of what he's going to get.
This is one of the main reasons why I love that the Raiders moved to Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess I'll segue a little bit into our next topic right here. I think another reason why Aiyuk is upset, and maybe the timing of this TikTok post makes sense, is because other guys are getting contract extensions and getting paid maybe at a time when they don't necessarily need to.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not that they shouldn't be re-signed and shouldn't be given extensions. It's just the timing here. It's like, well, why not Aiyuk, right?
Yeah.
So
one of the people that you're talking about is Christian McCaffrey, and McCaffrey was under contract, and they decided to extend him anyway. I'm going to pull up, I guess when Schefter broke the news.
I know somebody, I don't know if it was Schefter or Rappaport or somebody else, but somebody mentioned that he was secretly holding out in a way, or
No, he
hoping
was
for a new deal. Yeah,
It's funny.
So-
Like McCaffrey wasn't going to practice, for I want to say like 2 weeks into OTAs, and like there was a very select few people, Grant Cohn being one of them, that's like, this isn't him just planning his wedding. I think McCaffrey's supposed to get married soon. It's like, you can pay somebody to plan your wedding. Like this, this has to do with contract. Like, what else could it be? Last year McCaffrey was at practice, every single day, working his ass off. And then now this year it's different. So it looks like it was due to contract, and McCaffrey did get signed to an extension. So Adam Schefter says, reigning offensive player of the year, Christian McCaffrey once again has reset the running back market, signing a 2-year extension with the 49ers, averaging $19 million per year per sources. McCaffrey will receive an additional $8 million over what he was scheduled to make in the first 2 years, while adding $24 million in guarantees. This deal was negotiated and confirmed by WME Football.
Man, hey, I mean, coming off an Offensive Player of the Year award, and the start of minicamp and OTAs and whatnot, this was definitely, I'd say, the right timing for McCaffrey to hold out, and he quietly got it done. I guess that's what's the most impressive here. But also, I guess from my perspective, it makes sense because, like we mentioned earlier, like on some days, Aiyuk is the fourth option in the offense, whereas McCaffrey is always the number one. And for a running back, $19 million per year is nuts. But for him, it's not. So
I think it just has to do with the usage. But I mean, this is kind of bittersweet, I would say, because I would say 99% of the time you should not pay a running back. You should look to replace the running back, because running backs are a dime a dozen, and they're a high risk position. McCaffrey has already had 2 season-ending injuries in his career, and granted, he has not had those recently, and he has performed very well in San Francisco. He is, what is he, 28 years old now? I think he's 28.
27 or going on 28.
Here, let me see. McCaffrey age. He's 28 right now, and he actually turned 28 10 days ago. So happy belated birthday, Christian McCaffrey.
He's having a hell of a month.
Yeah, so he's going to be on the 49ers theoretically for 4 years, including this one. Yeah, because I want to say he had 2 years left on his deal, and then so this is an additional 2-year extension. So he's going to be very expensive, and he's going to be in his early 30s when, while he's on the team.
While he's getting paid at a very high rate.
Yeah. Assuming that there's guarantees in the back end of the contract. Like maybe they're front loading the guarantees and they can move off of him if he's not worth it by then. But
Maybe. I mean, we'd have
Kyle
to really
Shanahan
look at it.
babysat this kid. So
Yep. Possibly a little bit of favoritism, but still, at least it makes sense because of his usage.
Yeah. No, and he's really that good. Like if you look,
he is.
Like the way he was used, like you said, you could justify paying a guy like that. But, in general, you don't want to be paying running backs top dollar because you can use that. Like I would rather have an above average running back behind a highly paid offensive line than to have, a highly paid running back behind a below average offensive line.
100%. Yep. And I guess one thing I'll just say here really quick is just going back on the Aiyuk thing really quick. When you consider that they have to pay Purdy in the next 2 seasons, and you're going to have this going on, $19 million per year for 4 years for a running back. And then you just drafted a first-round wide receiver who I personally really like. It all spells they're not going to keep Aiyuk, And I think the franchise tag plan in theory makes sense, but it could be like the moment they hit him with the first franchise tag, he'll lose his mind and just be, much harder to deal with than he already is.
Mm-hmm. Real quick, before I get into what I just pulled up on the screen, I do just want to give a quick shout out to Joel. Joel, welcome back. Great to have you here. We're going to get into some Raider stuff a little bit later in the show, but, stay tuned. But the 49ers, signed Juwan Jennings to a 2-year deal worth up to $15.4 million with $10.5 million guaranteed. So literally everyone is getting money besides Brandon Aiyuk. And Aiyuk is like, Aiyuk is, I would say, the issue at hand. Like he's the one who's like, trying to get his second contract. Obviously, this is Jennings' second contract too, but Jennings had an offer for, a second round tender, which I guess he didn't sign, and they just ended up extending him anyway.
Yep.
And I want to say that when the 49ers drafted Ricky Pearsall, you and I were both like, well, Aiyuk's gone. So literally all these moves are telling you that Brandon Aiyuk is not going to come back. Or Deebo Samuel. Or Deebo
at the very least, it sure does come off like the Niners don't want Brandon Aiyuk. Granted, I think they do. It's just that they want him at their price. So
yeah, and so re-signing Juwan Jennings, I think it's not a bad price. That's like what 7.6 million per year, 7.7 million per year. That's pretty good for a guy who's as reliable on third down, who blocks, who gets under the opposing player's skins. Like, that's a pretty good contract, I would say.
Yeah. I really liked the way that he played in the Super Bowl, and I'd like to see him, I wouldn't call it break out, but get more targets, because I just finished a dynasty fantasy football draft, and I ended up picking him with one of my last veteran picks, and I was looking at his history and last season stats, and I'm like, man, he doesn't get targeted very much. He's not a fantasy football guy,
No.
And whether or not they keep Aiyuk, I think they should integrate Juwan Jennings into the offense a little bit more because, again, I think his performance at the Super Bowl really showed he deserves a shot every given Sunday,
Juwan Jennings is very much a football player, obviously he's a football player, but I don't think he's in it for the glory or, for the name recognition or anything. Like he is in there, pardon my French, to fuck shit up. Like, he kind of fights with the other teams without all right, he instigates the most fights without drawing a penalty, I find. Like when I watch Niner games, I can think of like at least two or three times maybe this past season where like a cornerback got penalized for like smacking Jennings, So I think he's a great player to keep in your wide receiver room. Granted, the wide receiver room is stacked, and we still have yet to figure out, there's still the elephant in the room, which is Brandon Aiyuk and what they're going to do with him. But personally, I like this extension. Now let's go back to McCaffrey. So McCaffrey is not only just being paid more highly, than he was before. He's by far the highest paid running back. Running backs, last year we were talking about running backs couldn't get a contract to save their life. McCaffrey, in like 2 weeks, he's like, you know what? I'm unhappy with my money. The Niners just made him that much more highly paid than he already was. McCaffrey is now, he's one of the faces of the NFL. He is on the cover of Madden 25. I'm going to pull up what the cover looks like, at least on the deluxe edition.
Yeah, I just sent it to you on the Twitter account.
Okay. Let's see here. All right. So this is what I would call a silver and gold special edition cover because it's Christian McCaffrey running away from 2 Raiders. So clearly EA Madden NFL has, heard of the podcast and they're big fans of the show. And they wanted to design a cover to sort of like recap what the show is all about. It's all about the Niners running the show. Okay. No, I'm just playing. Yeah. Awkward. Oh. But McCaffrey being on the cover, people are talking about the Madden curse, right? People are talking about the Madden curse, but I can't think of a team that has been through more pain leading up to their Madden curse debut than the 49ers. Like I've seen a season where everybody got hurt. I've seen a season where everybody just went up and left the team, retired. I've seen 3 Super Bowl losses in 11 years. Like what more do I have to endure? Madden curse? Can there be a reverse curse this time? Patrick Mahomes was on the cover twice and he just won 2 Super Bowls recently. He was on the cover with Tom Brady in Madden 22, and he was on the cover of Madden in Madden 20. This is the first running back since like probably Madden 11. What was it? Peyton Hillis?
I think so.
So first running back on the cover of Madden in a very long time. I think that, I think it's awesome. I've never seen a 49er on the cover of Madden. And typically, like when it comes to video games, I want to like on Xbox or PlayStation, I think I prefer to own digital copies, but I almost feel like, I'll wait until this goes on sale and I'll pick up a physical copy of the game because I've never had like a 49er that I could like, have on a video game, which I think is cool.
Yeah, there's never been a Raider on the cover before. These guys in the background here are just actors. I saw the video from the photo shoot. It's interesting. One thing you noted to me was like, wait, the Niners didn't play the Raiders in red jerseys last time. In Vegas, It was Raiders in black, Niners in white, and that was an amazing game. But, at first I was like, damn, they got, like, I always thought with Madden covers, it was like they do photo shoots, right? So I was like, wait, they got a real photo from a game? That's crazy. Like, that's a really great photo. And then I thought about it, I was like, nah, there's like no blur. He's looking straight at the camera. That's not real. And then I realized the jerseys were swapped, and I was like, okay, all right, cool. But yeah. And then I also sent the other cover too on the.
Isn't McCaffrey also a captain? They don't have a captain patch.
Interesting. Yeah. Yep.
So I don't know if that's just a detail that they missed, or maybe I'm just overlooking. Like maybe McCaffrey wasn't a captain, and I'm misremembering. But
yeah, I actually not just because the Raiders are getting beat in the deluxe edition cover, or at least visually they're getting beat, but I really like the other cover more. I think it's like a more badass cover. Whereas the other one, like it's cool, like he's looking right at the camera and all that, but I don't know. I like the other cover more.
I honestly like both covers, to be honest.
No, they're both fine.
Yeah, this one, like,
I think
he's
they're better
flexing
than
it.
recent years. I'll say that. They're better than recent years.
Yeah, I think I like this better than the one of. I mean, it was kind of unique last year. Josh Allen was like in the stands, with fans. Like he like
Right.
leaped into the stands, but wasn't there like something photoshopped poorly on that, like his face mask or something?
I don't even remember. And then the
But
alternate cover foot was just like his face really close up.
but yeah, no, this. I mean, it's just pretty cool. Obviously, I'm gonna be biased because I'm a 49er fan, but this is like you can say what you want about the quality of the game, but I think it is like cool to get recognition for your team on like what is
Yeah.
the only simulation football game on the market.
Yeah, I'd say the closest the Raiders have ever gotten to being on the cover, besides this alternate deluxe edition cover, is just the original Madden games that had John Madden on the cover.
Mhm.
But he wasn't like wearing Raider gear or nothing. Well, I guess okay. Actually, sorry, the year that Madden died, they came out with the
Yeah, he's being
Madden
carried.
cover where he's being carried. So that was actually the best. Yeah, and that was one that I wanted physically, but I never ended up getting it.
Well, you can get it now for probably $5, like,
Probably.
or less,
Yeah.
like just to own the physical copy. Like, you don't have to play it, but it's like, hey, the Raiders are represented on this cover. And that's sort of my plan for Madden 25. I really want to play it because like, I heard that they're going to have like an actual team builder where you can, create your own jerseys and stuff, but they're also going to have that in the NCAA game too. So, or I guess EA Sports college football, whatever they want to call it. But there is a bundle that comes with both. I just kind of want to wait until they're on sale before I pick them up.
But nice.
And then we've got a comment from the numbers, with an 83 in there, with Raider flags. We will get to the Raider portion of the show sooner rather than later. I think I'm pretty much done with talking about, McCaffrey, on the Madden cover. It's just, it's kind of cool to see that like he is, I mean, he's already been a superstar. He's like the number one draft choice in every single fantasy football draft every single year. But, I'm kind of glad that the football game is going back to not just having quarterbacks on the cover every year.
Yes.
So let's talk about Darren Waller's retirement. Former Raider, as the numbers
Raiders.
The Raiders. Mike,
yeah. Darren
tell
Waller
me. I mean,
retires.
Darren Waller's one of your favorites. Tell me about it.
Yeah. It's there's this weird thing where you get so into a player as a member of your team, right? And like Darren Waller definitely became one of my favorite players between his style of play as a tight end. I don't know why I just always gravitate towards the tight end position, but him being like a speedier tight end and just this athletic freak, but also a very old school Raider in just the way that he was like this nobody who was troubled off the field. He had suspensions and everything. And then one random day or game day, John Gruden, the head coach at the time, notices this guy on the Ravens practice squad who's just going all out and going crazy physically just before the game. And he's like, who the hell is that guy? Next day, he's a Raider, Darren Waller. It's just that's such an old school Oakland Raiders story.
So did you hear the story behind that too? I think Waller was it RG3 who was the quarterback at the time to like throw it higher, and he went up and got it, and that was right in front of the Raiders, and that's a reason why I think teams don't practice in front of other teams anymore.
Yeah, you know what? I think they should be able to. That's a dumb rule because that got him a lot of money that he otherwise may have never gotten, And Yeah, and just if there's a good player on a practice squad that's hidden, like, hey, when it's my team, I want him to be hidden on the practice squad, but he also deserves a shot to go make some money, right? That's what he's there for. So, but yeah, I mean, and everything he kind of stood for as far as what he had gone through with, his previous substance addictions and, persevering through that and and really setting a great example, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah, no, he was clearly a Raider through and through, and then everything just kind of soured with McDaniels. There are these reports that he wasn't practicing very hard, or just not showing up because he was injured. Which that was another thing that soured, was that he was kind of often injured at the end, and there was some weird off the field stuff with like Maxx Crosby and Darren Waller oddly got married like on the same exact day. So the head coach Josh McDaniels went to Maxx Crosby's. And then like Darren Waller's now ex-wife uh tweeted something like, well, Josh McDaniels wasn't invited anyways, or weird shit. Like it was just like, what are we doing here? So he ends up leaving. Point being, like, it's this weird thing where I get so invested in a player as a person and whatnot, and then half the time when they leave the team, it's like, after like a year, Like I was so invested in this player as a person, all that, and then he's gone for a year, and I'm like, whatever, you know? And in hindsight, like the Raiders got a third round pick for him, and I believe that turned into Trey Tucker. I could be wrong. And we'll see what happens with Trey Tucker as far as his career and, time with the Raiders. But I remember at the time when the Raiders traded Waller, it was like, well, apparently the Packers offered a second round pick the year prior. Like, man, that really sucks for them, the Raiders, right? But then now it's like 1 year or 2 years later, not even 2 years later, Darren Waller's retiring. And if they had just waited one more season, like he wouldn't have been worth a fourth round pick, you know? So I don't know. But at the end of the day, I guess I care more about the person than the draft pick that we got for him. And I guess I hope all is good with him, because obviously, like I mentioned, he did get a divorce like very early on into his marriage. And obviously that's his personal business. I'm not gonna speculate or anything, but at the end of the day, he put out a video explaining why he retired, and he just seemed like his heart wasn't in the game anymore. I think he's very serious about his music career, and just his music period. And I think clearly a lot is probably on his mind going through the divorce and whatnot. So, with the physical toll and preparation that it takes to be an NFL player, I don't blame him for deciding to retire when he doesn't feel mentally and physically just into it right now. Granted,
Yeah.
he's leaving a lot of money on the table, but if he's not in it, then maybe he shouldn't do it. Because again, he was
Um,
often injured, so it's like I've had things with my back, and it's like it like you hear injuries with NFL players, and it's like we're so used to it that it's like, whatever, he'll come back. But you have one, like, you could break a toe and you'd be like, I may never walk the same again. It's like that's what these guys deal with all the time. So I don't blame a guy for being like, man, fuck this. I'm not in it. So
mhm. Yeah, I think Darren Waller definitely, like, you could say he left a lot of money on the table, but I would say his music career, like, he seems to be the second coming of Tupac. Um, I'm just playing. I don't like the music that Darren Waller has made so far. That's not to say that he can't make good music going forward, but I think, like, in terms of the person, he seems like he's going through a lot, especially like with his divorce, and it seems like he's pouring a lot of emotion from that into the music. Um, and people have, like, kind of made memes about the music and in the music video. um, yeah, I don't know. He's definitely been dealing with at least that hamstring injury that dates back to the Raiders, and doesn't have, I would say, as good of a quarterback as he had with Derek Carr than he does with Daniel Jones. And that could also be a factor as to why he's sort of lost interest in playing. Plus, the media is different out, in a bigger market like New York.
Yep.
Yeah. The numbers says Waller can still play for a Super Bowl contender, maybe the Jets. I personally don't view the Jets as a Super Bowl contender. Maybe Mike has a different opinion, but
I don't
like
see.
I'd say they're a playoff contender. I don't know
Hmm.
if they're in contention to win a Super Bowl.
You know what I can see right now is a team with a top end tight end. The tight end goes down. So, I mean, the obvious choice is the Chiefs, right? But maybe the Lions, maybe the Ravens. That'd be a homecoming for him if Mark Andrews went down again, because Mark Andrews, he seems to go down almost every year now, it feels like. I could see teams reaching out to him like mid-season, like, hey, we need help in this tight end room. Like, what do you think? But
Yeah.
I can totally agree with that as far as what the numbers is saying here. With I would play till the wheels fall off. Keeping yourself financially stable, yeah. You hear these stories every here and there about NFL players going broke, and it's like, man, especially recent players who have made a lot of money, like Antonio Brown. No shade to him, even though I despise him as a Raider. Apparently, he's gone bankrupt or something to that effect, and it's like, bro made so much money, and yet here we are, right? Like, how does that happen, right? What do you have to do? Yeah, what do you have to do to lead yourself towards that, And yeah,
I would
between
say
not investing and just blowing your fucking money, it's like, how do you do that? But if Waller's comfortable with where he's at and he's not unwise with his money, then hey, man, I'd say he can do whatever he wants.
I would sort of argue, from my perception, it almost feels like the wheels have fallen off for Darren Waller because he can't stay healthy. And then also is posting these, like TikTok videos that have people questioning like if he's okay. And then stuff comes out about his personal life. Like, I think maybe mentally and a little bit physically, maybe the wheels have fallen off for him. And that's why, that's part of the reason why he's walking away from the game. He, to me, seems troubled in some way, and I hope that he can get some sort of help or some sort, find some sort of peace within,
Yeah, I honestly, from what I've seen, I don't think he's necessarily troubled. I just think, for whatever reason, his relationship fell through. Like we had mentioned, his body, was not really maintaining relative to staying healthy in the NFL. But like, as far as like troubling, like there was a video where he was like singing along to like this song that he was making or something, and he seemed like really into it, and like people were like thinking like, whoa, is he like, is he on something or something? But I think in hindsight, like, I don't think he was. I think he's an artist, and I think he's really passionate about his art, and I think that's what that was. And I think at the end of the day, as far as it goes into his health, but also when it comes to his relationship, NFL, and music, those three things, and probably maybe his family life as well. Yes, indeed. The numbers, yes, indeed. I think maybe the NFL or the music or the relationship, one of those things could have been a hindrance towards those other things, So it's like he's just got to focus up. So, But I think at the end of the day, I think he'll be fine. His music, I think his music's fine. Like, I don't think he's gonna go big or anything. No offense, but the song that everybody's making fun of him, this kind of like, if you will, tribute to the divorce. I think it's a fine song. I think it's fine. It's just whether you make fun of him for using autotune or mostly you make fun of him for, the music video. I think the music video, again, he's very what was the word I just used? He's very passionate and like trying to be artistic, but it comes off very cheesy. But when you don't have that cheesy music video like hindering your experience of the song, I think it's a fine song.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways.
Yeah, and then in terms of like actual success, from his music career so far, he is in the soundtrack of Madden 24.
Yep.
So there's at least maybe a little bit of success. That song, all right. I'm not saying it's a great song, but it's a song that like a couple of my friends and my cousin and I joke about because it's like very repetitive. But it's just funny because it's also like it's just random NFL players on a song. It's I want to say it's Ray McLeod, Darren Waller, and it's either Teron Armstead or Terrence Armstead. Yeah, and it's just like imagine. All right, I'm just imagining this is how it went down. All right, pick 3 random NFL players out of a lottery thing, and let's make a song for the game, baby. But I think we're ready to move on to the next topic. Yeah, let's talk about the post June 1st cap space. Mike, do you want to pull up the numbers?
Yeah, let's do that. First for the Niners, actually check the tweets that I sent you. I want to say I have something in there revolving around this. Let's see. Oh yeah, the very last tweet that I sent you.
All right, I'm pulling it up right now. Right here. Okay.
So there is no Niners player on here with like a major cap savings for June 1st. Oh, yep. I'm blind. There you go. All right. So the Niners saved $17.8 million as of June 1st for cutting Eric Armstead. And let me see. They currently now, the 49ers, have $32,706,743 in cap space. $32 million. That's pretty good. That sounds and that's post Christian McCaffrey extension pay raise. That sounds a lot to me like you can front load something, or like last season, they can just hold on to it in case something, break the glass if something bad happens, right? And then worst comes to worst, not really worst comes to worst, but they can roll that over into next season, I want to say. Which in theory, that would actually make the most sense because that's when you could sign Brock Purdy, right? So maybe that's what they try to do. As far as dead money, they have $19.5 million in dead money this year. Yeah, and then the Raiders, just to get through both teams here, the Raiders have just about the same amount of cap space. They have $34.98 or $0.098 million in cap space and almost twice as much dead cap. They have $29.25 million in dead cap this year. But obviously at the top there, they just got $24 million in additional cap space for cutting Jimmy Garoppolo under a post-June 1st designation. So
do you miss
they
them?
jumped from 10 million to 34 million. So again, now the Raiders have space for re-signing guys and potentially front-loading contracts, whatever they want to do, or signing a corner, whatever they want to do here. So maybe in the next couple of topics, we might kind of cover some of those things they could do or even have done.
Real quick, I just want to address this comment that I see from the numbers. He says, dream scenario Super Bowl match, 2026 Levi Stadium, Raiders versus 49ers. All right. Mike, you and I have talked about this a couple times about the Raiders and the Niners, facing off in the Super Bowl. I don't think Mike has said he would not watch the game with me. He wants to be locked in a room away from anybody who's not for the Raiders.
Yeah.
I
may not talk to you for a week.
Yeah.
Leading up to the game. And if the Niners win, probably another week after.
Dude, do you know the numbers that our podcast would do? If all right, because this would be 2026, right? This would be years building up to this moment. and it would be happening in the Bay Area. We would probably go to the, like the media stuff, as long as like, we file to get like credentials for the media day. We would be able to interview players from the teams, like, or like, at least talk to players from the teams. Like that would be crazy. And then we would like, that would be just wild. And then Mike and I have both said, in a way, we hope this doesn't happen, because one of the fan bases will just have nothing, they can win any single like argument with the other fan base just by pointing to that Super Bowl. So if the Niners, like let's just say the Niners, beat the Raiders, Niner fans can always, oh yeah, but what happened in the Super Bowl in 2026? Conversation over. Or vice versa. Raiders win that Super Bowl. Hey, we beat you guys in the Super Bowl in your own house. Suck it. Conversation over. There's nothing else that can be said.
Yeah, as far as I know, that's our house now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but we had a deal, Mike. You guys didn't uphold your end of the bargain. The Niners were supposed to win this. No. Niners were supposed to win the Super Bowl, and then you guys were supposed to win. So now you guys are going to go to Levi Stadium and lose the Super Bowl in 2026. That's how this works. Now you have to feel the pain.
Well, that's my point. You guys didn't uphold the bargain because you fucking lost to the Chiefs. Thanks.
No, Kyle lost. Niners won. No, I'm just playing.
But hopefully, to wrap this up, hopefully our little deal, because again, to the numbers here, before, like, I think it was like one of our first pods. So before this past season, we were like, man, how cool would it be if this year the Niners go to the Super Bowl in the Raiders Stadium and they win, right? Like, from my perspective, I was like, I'll be fine with that so long as the Raiders can go to the Super Bowl in 2026 at Levi's and also win. That was the deal. But the Niners
lost. The deal's broken.
No, I think the deal's still pretty much intact. It's just the Raiders have to win for you guys in 2026.
No, stop it. So the numbers says the Raiders win on a Maxx Crosby safety. I would throw up out of my ears. That is not the first body part that came to mind, but I had to stop myself. Yeah. But what the Raiders could do with their cap space is add Brandon Aiyuk to the team. What do you think, Mike?
Well, that was the original rumor. I don't know if like Brandon Aiyuk's brother or somebody was like a fan of the Raiders, or just because of Antonio Pierce. But when all this really started with like Brandon Aiyuk having issues with his contract, it was like his brother was on Twitter or something saying like, yeah, he's going to the Raiders anyways. So again, that was our first topic, but Brandon Aiyuk and his people have just had fun with getting other fans excited about potentially adding Aiyuk. But in my opinion, I don't think Aiyuk's leaving the Niners relatively soon, unless he held out into the season, maybe. But we'll see. Mm-hmm. But also, I don't see it. I don't see it for Aiyuk to the Raiders. I think the most realistic option is the Commanders, but the Commanders are in the NFC, so it's like, do the Niners want to do that? I don't know. Anyways.
Mm-hmm. So Maxx Crosby got a raise, Mike. Let's talk about it.
Yes, I should have sent you a tweet on our Twitter, but he basically got a $6 million raise for this season, and he might have also got like a $1.8 million raise for next season as well. Let me know if you see the tweet.
I am pulling it up right now. From Schefter, right?
Yes. Yep, there it is. So the Raiders reworked the contract of three-time Pro Bowl defensive end Maxx Crosby to give him a $6 million raise for the upcoming season. The team also moved an additional $1.2 million into 2025, so next year. The Raiders wanted to reward their leader, culture setter, and one of the best players in the league with the intent of keeping him in Las Vegas for years to come. No new years were added to Crosby's deal, meaning the 26-year-old still has 3 years left on his current contract. So genuinely just a pay raise, because I when we talked about Maxx Crosby in the past, I know I've said like he gave us a hometown discount like from the
Yeah.
start. Like he accepted a deal that most like top 10 defensive ends probably would have been like, I think we can do better than this, you know? So yeah, this doesn't shock me at all. And really, I think it's a good thing. I think a lot of guys, some fans might be like, oh man, we could have used that for a free agent corner or whatever. But like, I'd rather the Raiders reward the guys that put in the work. You know, I'd rather the team show like, hey, if you prove yourself and you show that you're worth more to us, we will reward you for that. You know, I think this sets a great standard for both ends, for not only Maxx Crosby, but also the Raiders franchise, you know, and their players moving forward. Like, if you show out for us, we will reward you. I personally really like that.
Yeah, no, we have talked about it. Crosby took a team-friendly deal, and I think, right now there is no pressing need for the Raiders contract-wise, so it kind of makes sense that they're giving more money to Crosby because he sort of sacrificed a little bit for the Raiders, and now they can sacrifice a little bit when it's not a matter of, oh, Brandon Aiyuk's going to be on the team or not,
Right.
or
Yeah.
let's just say in this case, if it was Josh Jacobs holding out.
Yep.
Like Jacobs is gone. It seems like there are no impending free agents that are holding out on the Raiders, to my knowledge, and maybe there are. That were
pretty sure there are not any. Colton Miller currently at like OTAs and whatnot. He's on the side, still rehabbing his shoulder injury. Other than that, I think the first day, like everybody was in there except for one, like pretty much practice squad guy. He might have had a personal reason. So
yeah, and then I think what's cool about this deal too is it's just a raise for the upcoming season. It's not like progressively going to get bigger,
like say Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah.
Yeah, but okay, can you scroll down just to the date of this tweet? Because I forget what day this fell on.
May 23rd. So it's been a couple weeks.
Okay, and this wasn't even post June 1st. This was just with the remaining cap space that they had at the time. And then obviously they must have had like say $16 million in cap space. They do this and went down to 10, and then the $24 million bump from Jimmy Garoppolo. Now they're sitting at $34 million per this season right now as far as cap space goes. So still lots of room to work with in case they wanted to make any additional moves.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, the fact that they're able to make their number one player happy while not hindering the team, I think it's definitely good and it's well deserved. Yep. Before we move on to our next topic, I do want to get to a couple of the comments. So Mr. Amazing hops in. So I met Mr. Amazing at the Joyner Lucas concert. He was standing there right next to me. I showed him the channel. I want to say, if I remember correctly, your name was Sean. Correct me in the comments if it wasn't Sean, because I also the venue's loud. I was in the front row, so I kind of put in earplugs to sort of protect myself from having ringing in my ears for the rest of the night. I was still able to hear the show. It was loud enough, but he says, this regime always plays hardball for no reason. Shake my damn head. Man, he really doesn't like the way Raiders do business, huh? No, I'm just playing. He's talking about the 49ers. Yeah, so one thing that's very interesting is, in talking to Sean, he doesn't consider himself a 49er fan anymore and hasn't since 2012. And that was before they ever lost a Super Bowl. So,
was it because they were leaving Levi's, or
I think that
Candlestick?
That was part of the reason, but also I think it also had to do with he just does not like the Yorks. And if I remember correctly, he didn't even like Harbaugh. And then so it is Sean. So Sean, thank you for checking out the channel. I told you I was going to go live. We were going to go live last week, but we ended up pushing it to today, which actually works because of the whole Brandon Aiyuk thing. If you want to watch the Aiyuk thing, just rewind. It was our first topic. we're getting into some Raider stuff right now, and yeah, I think we're gonna finish off with Raider stuff. But let me get to a couple of these more, these other comments before we get into who the Raiders should resign. So let's see. Maxx Crosby, much deserved pay raise. Basketball talk. Celtics win it all today. Sean wants the Warriors to win today. No, I that's actually how I met Mr. Amazing at the concert. He was watching the Mavericks versus Celtics game, and I asked him what the score was, and I asked who he thought he was going to win, or who he wanted to win the series, and he said the Warriors. And hey, I really appreciate the loyalty, dude. I'm a Warrior fan too, so in terms of this question, Celtics, I think the Celtics are going to inevitably win the series, but I could care less, honestly. If the Warriors aren't in it, it doesn't really, it's whatever.
Same pretty much with the MLB for me at this point. But I would say as far as this series, if they're going back to Boston, then I'd say they'll probably win it.
Mm-hmm. And so Sean says they would have been better off trading Aiyuk during the draft or signing him last year. Now they'll get rid of him for chump change like Lance and justify incompetence. I can't disagree with that. That's honestly, like, if they don't end up getting a contract extension with him, I don't see any other way that it's going to play out besides possibly the very unlikely scenario that they just hold him against his will and have him be a cancer to the locker room for the next 3 years.
Yep.
So the number says he just subscribed to the channel. I appreciate that. We hope to, see your comments on future live streams. If you have a chance, leave us a like. And also, if you want to subscribe to, or I guess follow our Twitter page, it's hold on, I gotta look. It's at silver_goldpod. So goldpod, all one word, at silver_goldpod. Well,
maybe at the end of our podcast, we should start putting like everywhere we can be found.
Yeah.
And stuff. Pretty good.
Yeah. I think we'll start doing that. We are going to talk about the Raiders secondary in a second. And one more comment before we get into our next topic. Dub Nation, Clay unfollowed the Warriors the other day so he can get his money and years right with the Warriors. Politics move. Yeah. So Clay Thompson is just doing what like every NFL star has been doing, in terms of negotiation tactics. If the Warriors bring him back on a max deal, if they give him a max contract, oh my God, that would be really, really bad. I don't think Clay Thompson is that caliber player anymore, but I think, like, I love Clay Thompson and he's meant a lot to the Warriors dynasty, with the 4 championships, but he's just not the same player anymore. And I'm not too big on thank you contracts. Like, if it was Steph Curry, I think Steph Curry is like single-handedly, like, he is the Warriors and he still has a lot, or at least a little bit left in the tank and can possibly provide the team another championship window. The Warriors just need to focus on building around Steph Curry. And if Clay Thompson can get a max contract somewhere else, good for you, Clay Thompson. You've worked hard in your career. You deserve to go for, the money that you've earned. Like, get as much money as you can. And if the Warriors can't give it to you, sorry. Other teams are just going to naturally pay more for free agents. That's just how the business works. So, yeah. But for our next topic, who should the Raiders re-sign?
Yes, and this kind of is correlating with the post June 1st salary cap space that the Raiders have, and in a way, giving Maxx Crosby a pay raise. Like, I'd say now is the time where most of the free agents are off the market. And if you have a bunch of cap space, it's like, well, if you want to, you can front load contracts, you can re-sign guys, you can give out extensions like the Niners did with Christian McCaffrey. So, the point here would just be, let's try to find a couple guys that maybe the Raiders should look at for re-signing and giving 3 to 4 year contract, maybe 2 to 4 year contracts. Can we pull up the Raiders sheets, Google Sheets?
Yes.
Just so we can kind of get a visual aid. I have a couple guys in mind, but it'll probably help.
The Raiders belong to the Sheets. Okay. Let's see. All right. I think I've got it here. Going to share a screen with you.
I've also updated this recently. I took out the fullback position. They're just not going to sign a guy. So I have 2 wide receiver positions. I got Devontae Adams at 1, Jacoby Myers at the other. Trey Tucker under Jacoby Myers, but that's all kind of not necessarily on topic. Really, I'm looking for guys with 1 year left in their deal. So everybody on offense, as far as the starters go, they don't qualify, right? Colton Miller would be the closest one. He still has 2 years left, this year, next year. He's being paid well. Next year would be a time where maybe they can consider that. But, with his shoulder injury, it's like, well, I'd really like to see how he plays the next year, 2 years, right? Is he still going to be healthy, or is he going to start? Is that, knock on wood, man? Hopefully that doesn't become a problem with him, because we need a left tackle to hold it down. So really, I'm going to look at defense. If you want to scroll down just a little. And right off the bat, the first guy that really pokes out to me is Malcolm Kuntz. I think this year is going to be an interesting year for Tyree Wilson. If he breaks out, I guess the fact that they have Tyree Wilson a year after drafting him 7th overall, that screams to me that Tyree Wilson should break out this season and become the impending starter, right? But if Malcolm Kuntz goes out there and has another fantastic season, or even progresses even more so, why not keep him, right? I guess the issue would be maybe because he broke out last season and this season he might have more of a consistent role. It would be hard to figure out what the price should be for him, it's hard to determine, is he a rotational guy or is he a full-blown 3-down pass rusher, and I think that's kind of the trouble with Malcolm Kuntz. So I think he is the type of guy that he will probably get looked at a year from now. Actually, after the Super Bowl, before he becomes a free agent, that would be the time to try to re-sign him. Or he might be a franchise tag option, but for defensive ends, that's a pretty big price. So after that, you have Robert Spillane and Divine Diablo at linebacker, both of the starters. Luke Masterson's kind of the third guy, but he's on a restricted deal. So after this season, he's going to be pretty easy to re-sign. And then kind of hanging in the rafters is Tommy Eichenberg, 4 years, just drafted this season. So if he becomes a good player, it's like, well, maybe he's a impending starter someday, and maybe you don't need to re-sign a Robert Spillane. But the way Spillane played last season, I'd be all for a 1 year extension so that he, instead of having 1 year left on his deal, maybe has 2 years left, right? And then scrolling over to the right a bit, just to look at the secondary, I think my favorite choice as far as a guy to re-sign right now is Nate Hobbs. I think he's a top-end nickel in this league. And I recently listened to Maxx Crosby's The Rush podcast when he had Nate Hobbs on. And Hobbs seems like a really interesting and cool dude. He's obviously a tone setter on defense. He's a great player. But also he seems like a really close friend to Maxx Crosby. And just as a group, they have a really tight group right now. I mean, I wouldn't want that to go away, But you pair on just how well he's playing, it's like, I would sign him now. You know, I think Nate Hobbs is the one guy probably on this list that's like the money would make sense now. Like you can already kind of determine what he's worth. Whereas say a Trevon Merrick, another guy that I would absolutely give an extension right now, he still has room to grow. You know, so if he accepts a deal right now, he might be kind of lowballing himself. You know what I mean? The same for Kuntz. It's like if Kuntz accepts a deal right now, it's like if he breaks out further this season, he's worth way more than whatever he's accepting with the Raiders. You know?
Yeah, but if he doesn't, and he doesn't perform at the same, level that he performed last year, I mean, it's a huge risk. I think in most cases, waiting an additional year, coming off of your
Is worth it.
coming off of your best year, I think in most cases it's highly risky. Players get injured all the time,
Oh,
and
yeah.
you're not gonna get that payday. You know what I mean? Like, because
For the player, yes.
Kuntz's best year was clearly last year.
Mm-hmm.
Cash
Yeah.
in, cash in.
Well, again, if Kuntz keeps Tyree Wilson on the bench and, this past season he had like 8 sacks or something, if he goes out there and has like 13 sacks this year, he's going from being worth, say, I don't know, $17 million per year, maybe less than that. Maybe it's more like $14 million per year. Maybe that's what he would be signing right now is like $14 million per year.
Yeah.
Let's just say. If he goes out there and has 13 sacks this year, he's worth more than 20 per year. That's my thing with him is like he started to move out of the rotational pass rusher as the season progressed last year. If he's the starter this year and like he's keeping Tyree Wilson on the bench, he's going to get paid whether it's the Raiders or not. But yeah, there is a risk and that's tough, but he's under contract for a reason.
So you're saying Kuntz was being moved out of the rotation?
I'm saying, going into the season last year, we thought that Kuntz was going to be a rotational pass rusher behind Chandler Jones. And
Yes.
you also had this guy named Tyree Wilson who was selected 7th overall. Everybody thought that Tyree Wilson was going to be the breakout guy last year. It was Malcolm Kuntz. But as the season progressed, Kuntz became the clear-cut starter over Tyree Wilson. I mean, the entire year, Kuntz was getting more snaps than Wilson, but Kuntz wasn't expected to be this rotational guy. So I guess my point is Tyree Wilson going to break out and cut into Kuntz's snaps? Or is Kuntz going to break out further and keep Wilson on the bench? That's the question. That's why the Raiders can't pay him yet, because it's too much of a differential.
Mm-hmm. I think what I see here is Tyree Wilson's got 3 years on his deal, and Kuntz has got 1 year left. If I'm a football coach, and I understand that the NFL is a business, and I see that I've got this kid that needs to be developed a little bit more, I guess
I would play Kuntz.
I could see a situation where they see that Kuntz has 1 more year left on his deal, so maybe they do put him out there a little bit more than Wilson to try to prolong Wilson's career. But I could also see where they just want to have Wilson get used to being a starter. You know what I mean? So that's kind of tough. Really, I can't put myself in the shoes of Antonio Pierce, but if Antonio Pierce sees that he wants to give Wilson more time, then you should be in no rush to re-sign Kuntz, because his value is going to go down because Wilson's value is going to go up. But if you're Antonio Pierce and you think, I guess in both scenarios, you don't want to rush re-signing Kuntz. But if I'm in the shoes of Malcolm Kuntz, I just came off of probably my best season, and there's no guarantee that there isn't going to be roster politics involved of my playtime next year. I might be rotational, and Tyree Wilson may get the jump on me and may take playing time away from me. I better try and cash in while my value's high right now, versus if I have a down year right now, I'm losing millions of dollars. Yeah. That's just the way that I think. But if he wants to bet on himself, He may win several $1 million in the process. At the same time, he may also, it hurts more to lose than it does feel good to win. You know what I mean?
Right. Yep. Yeah, I think if I had to project right now, I think the Raiders will do something similar to last season where Malcolm Kuntz is the starter at the right defensive end position, and Tyree Wilson comes in to alleviate him, give him some rest, but also Tyree Wilson can come in on obvious passing downs and play sort of an interior pass rusher. Or even there were snaps last year where Maxx Crosby was playing on the interior on obvious passing downs. And then you can have Wilson taking Crosby's spot on the outside opposite Kuntz. Like they can have some fun this year with the pass rush, setups and whatnot. So I'm excited to see where it goes. I just Kuntz was the breakout player for me last year, and it's like if he goes out there this season, and this was my other point, I guess. If I'm Antonio Pierce and I'm like this player's coach and whatnot, and I look at this, 1 year versus 3 years for Kuntz versus Tyree Wilson, it's like if Wilson does need more time to develop and kind of learn the game before he goes out there and becomes a bona fide starter, get him snaps. Like I said, have him be the backup to alleviate Malcolm Kuntz. Have him come in on the interior. Have him take Crosby's spot when Crosby goes inside, whatever, right? Get him snaps for sure. But more than that, get Kuntz as many snaps as possible just to kind of give him a reward for playing good. Like as long as he's playing good, keep him out there. And if he's that good, he's going to make his money, whether it's with us or not. And hey, if it's not with us, we'll get a comp pick, right? That's cool. But at the end of the day, I think if he's a great player, you want to keep him. And I think if I'm Antonio Pierce and the general manager, I want to know what we have because, like I said, it's hard to pay him right now because you still don't fully know what you have here. We don't know if he's a 3-down pass rusher or if he should be a rotational guy. Mm-hmm. So I think I would put him out there, give him as many snaps as possible. And if he proves that he's a bona fide starter, that's when you probably consider giving him a franchise tag next season. So,
yeah.
Anyways.
And like I said, from the Raiders' perspective, there should be no rush to re-sign him, especially since you have Tyree Wilson right behind him with a couple years left on the deal.
Yeah. So just with the question at hand, again, scroll to the right all the way to the second safety position. My answer to this question, I thought I was going to have like maybe 3 names, but I'll just give one. It's Nate Hobbs. If the Raiders are going to re-sign a guy right now, it should be Nate Hobbs, in my opinion. But Trevon Merrick and Marcus Epps are very interesting to me because, and I'll get back onto them. I'm not going to go into full detail right now because we have a topic coming up about the secondary. But Trevon Merrick is a guy who I think has a lot to prove this year. Being 1 year left on his deal, this is the contract year for him, right? If he wants the big money contract, he's got to go out there and prove that he's worth it. And I think the Raiders probably want him to. And I think if I'm the Raiders, I want him to be a franchise safety, Mm-hmm. And then Marcus Epps is a guy who I think even though some fans don't think he's all that, I think he was a big reason why the defense took a jump last season. I like Merrick and Epps both. Neither of them gave up big plays down the field. They both managed to hold it down, deep on passing plays. So I like them both as a safety tandem. So, but again, to answer this question, to finish off this topic, I would re-sign Nate Hobbs if I'm the Raiders with $34 million in cap space.
Mm-hmm. Let's get to a couple comments and then we'll move on to the next topic.
Cool.
All right. So let's see here. The numbers was talking about, he said, I can see that now that the Raiders have a stud defensive tackle. I'm
probably
trying to remember
having Tyree Wilson going interior and all that. So when I say, just to go off of this, when I say like on obvious passing downs, having Crosby or Tyree Wilson go inside, like we've seen both of them go inside last season under Patrick Graham. And I think a big part of that was because of Malcolm Kuntz deserving to stay on the field, right?
Yeah.
And also a guy like Adam Butler deserving to be on the field on passing downs. they can have it on like an obvious passing down, but maybe it's a little short yardage, so maybe they still want a couple D tackles in there. They can have it be Christian Wilkins and Adam Butler for like a duo on the interior. But if it's like obvious passing, 3rd and 10, right? They're passing the ball. Tyree Wilson on the inside next to Christian Wilkins, Crosby and Coots on the outside, right? I guess point being, I don't think Christian Wilkins limits them to not putting a defensive end on the interior any given play if it's an obvious passing down. And also, I really like Adam Butler, so having him to also come in any given play is nice. And on obvious rushing downs, you have John Jenkins that knows. It all looks good this season, but moving forward, they're until they have a franchise quarterback, they're going to have cap space. Or until they re-sign everybody that has 1 year left. Like if they signed Hobbs, Merrick, Epps, and Spillane all to like pretty solid big contracts, yeah, they can't afford Kuntz, right? I don't know if I know him, but they can't afford Kuntz at that point. But if you manage to keep getting pretty cheap contracts and not having to pay a quarterback, you can afford these guys. So it's a luxury.
Yeah, the numbers says McDaniels didn't like Kuntz.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, then again, it's not really McDaniels' call on defense. I don't think that they didn't like Kuntz. I do remember when McDaniels took over, and when we first started this podcast, we were kind of going over the roster sort of projections, and I said Kuntz was a guy right on the edge of that 53-man bubble. I thought he could have been a guy that got cut because he hadn't up until that point proven himself, right? And Chandler Jones going through what he did and getting cut by the team led to Kuntz breaking out. I think until that moment, it was like Kuntz is a rotational guy. Kuntz last season, going into the season, until Chandler Jones was gone, was what I feel about Tyree Wilson right now. Unproven, rotational guy that's going to come in to alleviate the starter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mr. Amazing says, feel like the Falcons pulled the rug out, when they took their quarterback. Subpar team without a franchise quarterback. They need to get rid of Adams and try to get value from him. Raiders secondary feels like it's better. We're going to talk about the secondary in a minute, but, from Mr. Amazing's perspective, like from the outside, not being a Raider fan, he feels like the team is kind of subpar and that they're missing a franchise quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say the team is above. I think the team is above par.
Yes, I think the team is above par. The quarterback position is subpar, 100%.
I think it's a little below subpar, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, at least they have two guys that can go out there and win games, but I can't say that they will consistently win games, right? That's why it's subpar. But at least they have multiple guys who have started games before, and it's not like some shithead quarterback with a rookie who has never had any experience. Like, hey, Aiden O'Connell's had experience, and he's won some games. Same for Gardner Minshew. It's just they don't make it look the prettiest all the time. But yeah.
So in terms of the Davante Adams thing,
yes.
I think that's very interesting. I do kind of feel like it would be in the best interest for the Raiders to try and see what they can get for Davante Adams, because there may be a team that is willing to trade, some premium capital for him, like a win now team. My mind instantly goes to, what if there's a way for Davante Adams to get traded to a team, not the 49ers, but the Raiders end up with Brandon Aiyuk? Aiyuk would line up a little bit more with the timeline for when the Raiders finally do get their quarterback than Davante Adams, who is towards the end or out of his prime.
Yeah, I think what, Brandon Ayuk's like 26, 27?
I want to say he's 26. Brandon.
Davante, I want to say, is 31.
Aiyuk is 26.
Davante might be 29, actually. I could be totally off. Let's see.
He is 31.
Okay, so he is 31. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, I would much rather be paying a number one receiver who is 26 top dollar than a 31-year-old. top dollar, which they are doing with Devontae right now. The
Top
tricky
dollar's
thing,
gone up though. Top dollar's gone up. So
top dollar's gone
in a
up,
way,
but
he's like lower end of top dollar.
we'd have to pull up the list of top paid wide receivers right now. I want to say Devontae's still. He might be top 5 still. I want to say he's averaging around 29, 20, or 30 per year. Maybe 28, 28.5 or something like that.
Okay, so let's see. Average per year. Devontae Adams, 28. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's the 6th highest paid.
Okay. Yeah. And I mean, if Aiyuk's asking for a little bit more than that, like, but he'll last longer, you know? Like, I think Devontae Adams' contract looks very similar to me to Christian McCaffrey with the Niners. It's like 3 to 4 more years, and this dude's aging. And as far as their position goes, they're hitting the aging point, right? And give it a year or two, their play should probably decline just by recency bias and, positional history. Like the age usually checks out. So like, but the issue with Devontae was he wanted to go to the West to be closer to family. So I think, it's not like I highly doubt that he has a no trade clause. That's usually just a quarterback thing. But I don't know. I don't see it. I don't see the Raiders trading Devontae. I think they want to keep him until the wheels fall off. I really believe that. I think that they want him to be a Raider through and through. They want a leader in the locker room, and it would take something miraculous to trade him. Like the Rams don't need a fucking receiver. Like really, the only team, not the Niners anymore because they drafted Pearsall. Like there's no teams in the West that could do it besides the Chargers, and they're not going to do that. They're not trading with the Chargers. The Chargers would be perfect for him between Herbert and them having only a rookie.
In a way, the trade between the Niners and the Raiders, Devontae and Aiyuk, kind of makes sense because it seems like Aiyuk is interested in going to Vegas and making money there, getting the contract there. Did you know? I might have sent it to you on Twitter, but did you know that the Niners tried to trade for Justin Jefferson before he got extended?
Yes, I did hear about this.
So, there's a report or a rumor that the Niners tried to trade for Justin Jefferson before, he got $35 million per year. So the Niners might just not have interest in bringing Brandon Aiyuk back. Maybe they want, I would say Devontae Adams is currently still better than Brandon Aiyuk.
Yes.
Like he is an alpha number 1 receiver, stands on his own. Brandon Aiyuk, it has yet to be in a system where he has to prove that he can be the sole producing player in the offense in terms of the passing game. So if Aiyuk goes to Las Vegas, he would still have to prove, he would essentially have to prove that he can be the number 1 without the George Kittles, the Deebo Samuels, without, the Niners system that gets him, these wide open looks. I'm wondering, the Niners are win right now.
We've talked about this. Yeah.
Maybe they want Devontae Adams, even though he's older, but the window is right now, and then they won't have to pay him for as long as they would have to pay Brandon Aiyuk.
Right.
And then the Raiders could have Aiyuk for for when they do get that quarterback. Aiyuk will still be like, if the Raiders don't get a quarterback by the time Aiyuk is 31, then there's bigger problems with the Raiders.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Devontae Adams is 31 right now, about to be 32, right?
Yeah.
There is a realistic chance that Devontae Adams can be old and washed before the Raiders are actually able to get the quarterback to actually be able to utilize his skill set.
Yeah,
so
I agree with that.
I could see where our two teams are trade partners in that regard. Would I rather have Devontae Adams or Brandon Aiyuk? I would rather have Brandon Aiyuk going forward because he's younger.
Yes, but would you rather have Devontae Adams under the assumption that Brandon Aiyuk will be gone within the next 2 seasons? Would you rather have Brandon Aiyuk or Devontae?
Can you repeat that again?
Under the assumption, or maybe even the foresight to know Brandon Aiyuk is not going to stay on this team. They might franchise tag him for 1 to 2 more years. At most, he'll be on the team the next 2 seasons.
Okay.
Would you rather have Brandon Aiyuk for 2 years or Devontae Adams for 2 years in a Super Bowl window? To me, it's not a question.
So if I know that Aiyuk is going to leave, give me Devontae Adams for 2 years.
Yes, exactly. And the reason I asked that is because if the assumption in the Niners front office is, yeah, we don't plan on keeping Aiyuk past 2025, why not do the switch for Devontae Adams and bolster your win now, Super Bowl aspirations? And that's what I'll say this too. Not only would Devontae Adams be way closer to home because he's from the Bay Area, the one thing he's chasing is a ring. He wants to win. So, like I mentioned a couple times, we've talked about this before, and I think before we talked about potential trade offers, and I don't want to do that right now. It just take too long, but it makes sense to me. It 100% makes sense to me, and I agree. I would even say I'd be into it. I think it'd be great for both sides.
Yep. Because it's like you would be paying Aiyuk similar money to what you would be paying Devontae, but you would be extending the shelf life of not having to worry about the receiver.
And you guys would still have Pearsall in the wing. You'd have Debo for the next 2 years as well. I really like the prospect of cowing. Like, you'd basically have Debo and Devontae for the next 2 seasons in the remainder of your Super Bowl window, pretty much. I shouldn't say remainder, but that's about the same time you'll have McCaffrey at his peak, Trent Williams, etc. George Kittle, right? Charvarius Ward, whatever. But it would bolster your shot, I'd say. And like Mr. Amazing's saying, that it'd be right in the ballpark of what the Niners are willing to pay, and it could be shorter term, because I'm sure that's what's holding them up too, is like, fuck, we don't want to go long term with Aiyuk because we have to pay Purdy, right? So with Devontae, it's like, we'll just give him 2 years. Or this is the other thing I thought of. Stephon Diggs, he's 30 years old. The Texans trade for him, I think, right? And what did they do within a week? They changed his contract from a 3-year deal to a 1-year deal so that he can become a free agent next year. So if the Niners wanted, they could trade for Devontae, and then if Devontae's open to it, alter the deal so that he becomes a free agent after the season or after 2 seasons. So he can get one last deal with, somewhere.
Yep.
Whereas Aiyuk with the Raiders, it's like, let's do long term, and then all the Raiders have to do from that point is let's just find our quarterback, dude. We got our receiver. So yeah, I'm here for it. But that's the thing. This is my last thing with that. It's just, for me, with the Devontae and trading him, it has to be the right situation, because I think the Raiders, maybe I'm sort of being a little, not homerish, but just assuming the best case scenario, I guess. But I would have to imagine the Raiders do care about, like, Devontae Adams' feelings, if you will. Like, obviously it's a business and at times things change, but I think the whole, like, him wanting to be near his family and stuff. And again, I think the Raiders want, like, star players. I think they want a guy like Devontae to help sell tickets at the very least. So, in this scenario, you get a Brandon Aiyuk in return. Perhaps we give up an extra pick in this trade. I have no idea, but at least in getting Brandon Aiyuk, it's like, well, they could still sell the same amount of tickets. Whereas if you just give up Devontae and it's like, oh, yay, we got a second-round pick because, again, he's 31 years old.
Yeah. The fans would go nuts.
Dude, that's too big of a hit. That's too big of a hit.
But if you get, like, a solid young player, like, you would have a section of Raider fans who would be like, man, this is stupid. And then you would have probably, I would have to assume at least half of Raider fans would say, no, this is actually a good trade because now we have the flexibility of having more time to find the right quarterback and not rushing into something that has to work with Devontae and having to overpay for a quarterback to be able to pair with Devontae before he gets too old to even use him.
Yep. Or the only other aspect I could see, but this would hinder like ticket sales and stuff for a little bit, is if they trade Devontae and somehow manage to get a first round pick, like it's from a Niners, right? A team that's like very much top 4 teams in the league. They expect to win a Super Bowl, right? Maybe the Ravens. I don't know. And they give up their first round pick, and the Raiders could look at it as, well, now we have more capital to trade up for the quarterback, right? And then receiver, either one of two things. One, receiver is pretty easy to like replace, like you can find pretty great receivers in like the 3rd, 4th round of drafts. Or they just say, or not say, but show that actually Jacoby Myers we feel he's underrated and he's our new number 1 receiver for a reason. It could be something like that, but again, I think I have said all that I have to say about that. So,
yep. Let's talk about Dylan Parham.
Yep, really quick here. Actually, if you could pull up the Raiders sheet again, we'll probably just keep it up from here, I guess. They switched Dylan Parham from left guard to right guard, and this was something that was being speculated early on this offseason because they draft Jackson Powers-Johnson. And I want to say Powers-Johnson had previously played on the left side as well as obviously center. They re-signed Andre James at center, so Powers-Johnson is going to be the guard opposite Parham. Parham has in the past I guess he's naturally a right guard. Like I think in college he played more right guard than left, and then they kind of switched him over to left, and it was a little bit of a learning curve for him. I don't know the stats, but apparently in the NFL, when he plays right guard rather than left guard, he's statistically better. And then also, I did send you a tweet. I'm sorry to make you keep switching things, but yeah, you know what? I'll just read it. James Craig, the new offensive line coach, former Niners assistant offensive line coach, said in a interview or press conference that they moved Dylan Parham to the right side because, in quotes, we're going to run more wide zone, and he is more natural on that side. His footwork is better. So this is just more of a scheme fit and personal fit for Dylan Parham. And at the very least, I can appreciate that, finally the coaching staff seems to be putting players in the spots that they should be put in, because I hate, it's more of a pet peeve than anything, but it's sort of like man, I wish I could see them at like their peak best opportunity, So like hearing guys on Twitter, like Raider fans on Twitter saying like, well, what the hell? Why do they have this safety here when he should be a box safety or blah, blah, blah. And it's like in college, he fit better as this position, but for some reason they're doing this with him. And it's like, man, I'd rather them put him in a position to succeed and not in a position of like, hey, learn on the fly, go get it done, and then they struggle. So the fact that this coaching staff seems to be putting players in positions to succeed, I really appreciate that. So I guess point being, as far as the offensive line goes, we'll be seeing Jackson Powers-Johnson on the left and Dylan Parham on the right, and that sounds like a good thing. Other than that, we can move on to the next topic. Whenever Josh returns. I guess one thing I will say about the offensive line that is at least interesting is every starter and even potential starter has at least 2 years left on their deals right now. You got Colton Miller with 2 years, Powers-Johnson with 4, Andre James with 3, Dylan Parham with 2, Thayer Munford, Dalton Wagner with 2, and Delmar Glaze at right tackle with 4. So this offensive line, in theory, as knock on wood, so long as everything goes well, they should be sticking together with this unit for the next 2+ years. So I like the continuity in that aspect. like I said, we are ready to move on to the next topic.
All right, let's talk about the Raiders secondary.
Yes, just a few things. Rob Ryan, speaking of press conferences for coaches, Rob Ryan is an assistant defensive coach, and he had some cool things to say about the safeties on the defense for this Raiders team. He mentioned Trevon Merrick as, I think the way that he put it was he's the most, I think he said the most athletically gifted safety in the league. And he sort of projects him for a breakout this season. Hence, another reason why I didn't pick him for the guy to resign right now, because if I'm Trevon Merrick on a contract year, it's like I want to break out before I accept a deal, right? I want to max value myself so that I get the max amount of money. So I think that's interesting. Rob Ryan also mentioned Marcus Epps as sort of this veteran on the defense that slows things down for everybody else, right? He's a great veteran leader to have on the defense. And I think it really did show. And the other thing that he mentioned was, Marcus Epps was on the Eagles a season ago, so before he became a Raider, right? And the Eagles defense was top tier. And then he leaves, and suddenly the Eagles defense struggles. So Rob Ryan was essentially just making the point of, there's probably a reason for that lying within Marcus Epps. And then you also pair the fact that Marcus Epps comes to the Raiders, and what does he do? He helps them become a good defense. There's probably correlation there between the Eagles getting worse without him and the Raiders getting better with him. And then the last thing, as far as the safety room goes, from Rob Ryan, he mentioned that Isaiah Polamau is a guy to look out for. He's going to be making an impact. And I remember when we were talking about, like, who are the key free agents for the Raiders to re-sign this past offseason, I mentioned Isaiah Polamau, a guy who was a restricted free agent and a guy that didn't get that many snaps and probably didn't pop out too often, but he doesn't do anything wrong when he's on the field. He actually plays very well. And I think safety is one of those positions where if you're getting noticed, unless you're getting a lot of interceptions, it's probably a bad thing, right? You're getting noticed because you're allowing players to run past you and get big touchdowns, right? But Trevon Merrick, Marcus Epps, Isaiah Polamau, these are guys who are really sneaky good, I think. And I'd like to see, great progression from all three of them, especially Merrick and Isaiah Polamau this year. So, and then moving on to corner, we had a comment earlier. I don't know if it was the numbers or somebody else, but
it was the numbers, yeah.
Mentioning that we need a corner, right? Raiders need cornerback number 2, and that's been a thing I've been saying since the draft, since free agency, really. And I agree. And I guess my point here is the cornerback market is drying up. Steven Nelson. Every time we do a podcast, I'm like, oh, the Texans corner. I kept saying the Texans corner. You're like, who is that? I don't know. Steven Nelson, that's his name. He just retired. So he was a free agent, but he retires.
And then Xavier Howard had like that thing going on. I just started laughing because, I think you sent me the tweet and you were like, well, never mind.
Yeah, I had been saying all offseason, like, man, he has history with Patrick Graham. Like, give me Xavier Howard. He's a former, like, Pro Bowl corner. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Not anymore. That dude's probably not playing another down in football. That dude might be in jail before he sees a football field, dude. No offense. It's just what he's accused of is not good. So I'm not going to go into that, but
no, full offense, Michael. Full offense.
Yeah,
stand on it. I'm just playing.
Yeah. So then that leaves me with a couple of questions with the cornerback room, because again, the cornerback options outside of the team are drying up. And honestly, up until this point, like it's June 17th. We're over halfway through the month. Since June 1st, they've had that $24 million bump in cap space, and yet nothing. Radio silence at corner. That almost tells me that they might not make a move. Or maybe we're still at the stage where these corners that are free agents, their price is still a little too high, and teams are waiting for the price to go down because these corners become a little desperate to, get on a team. It's also possible that these corners just don't want to go through training camp or something. Some players do that, especially veterans. It's like, fuck that. I'm just gonna wait and sign somewhere, and I'll make a difference, eventually. But I really don't think there's that many corners left. It's like Adoree Jackson, Akello Weatherspoon, and maybe one other guy as far as like viable number 2 corners. And once one of those guys go, it's going to be like, I'm going to be sweating actual sweat because after that, it's done, So my next question would be, is Brandon Faison really the corner too? And the reason I asked that is not only because he's number 2 on the depth chart right now, but I forget it was the Nate Hobbs podcast with Maxx Crosby. They were talking about their corner back, the fellow corners and defensive players. And Nate Hobbs mentioned Brandon Faison as an underrated player. And he said, like, that was the thing. He was asked, like, by Maxx Crosby, like, give me your Mount Rushmore. Like, that's the thing that his podcast does because it's called The Rush. So, like, the little game that they like to play on every podcast is give your Mount Rushmore of your position. And then he gave, Deion Sanders, Charles Woodson, this guy, that guy, Rod Woodson. And then after that was like, all right, now give me an underrated corner in the league. And at first he said Jair Alexander. Did I say it right this time?
Yeah.
At first Nate Hobbs said Jair Alexander, but then he said, nah, he's not really underrated. I'll go Brandon Faison. And he said, like, watch the tape from 2 seasons ago or something like that. He was like, watch the tape in like this specific game. That's a starting corner. And I was like, interesting. And he was injured all of last year. He was injured from training camp on. He never really got a shot to go out there. And obviously they had Marcus Peters for a point, and then they had who'd they have? They had Jack Jones and Meek Robertson. That was the other starter last year. So Faison barely got any playing time. I really wonder if they plan for him to be the second corner. And then it's just, hey, Jacorian Bennett, DeCamerion Richardson, and MJ Devonshire, if he makes the team, can you step up? Sam Webb, can you step up? Let's leave it up to these young guys to see if somebody will step up and become the next guy. Because my next question would be, can Jacorian Bennett make that year 2 leap? And additionally, like I said, DeCamerion Richardson, can he be a year 1? What was he, a 4th round pick? Can he be an out of nowhere rookie that just boom, starter? Can you be that guy? I would say my vote of confidence would probably go more towards Bennett because he had a year to get to know the NFL life. But I think right now it's Brandon Faison's job to lose. So.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't know of many corners. Like you said, it's day 17, or I guess day 16 if you want to be like really technical about it, since the post June 1st cap space alleviation. Who really is left on the market for the Raiders to add? I don't think that they are going to add anybody. And then also too, if you see here, they've got so many people that they've added through the draft and through undrafted, free agents. I think that's their plan.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they're just going to be in the wing, and, again, it's Brandon Faison's job to lose unless Jacorian Bennett proves to be the guy, like we kind of hoped and heard last year. I guess the one thing I could see if they don't sign a guy leading up till training camp, if somebody goes down, I could see them signing a guy. But until then, or the other thing they could do is they could wait until after the final cut days, week 3 of the preseason, and then a guy like the Niners have hella corners.
Yeah, they've got Rocky Sin, they've got Chase Lucas, Isaac Yadam. I feel like this might be the year that Ambry Thomas finally gets cut. But we'll see, because he was actually starting football games. You know what I mean? So they might just like keep him on the bench. I would lose my mind if Ambry Thomas is playing and Renardo Green is not. I would lose my mind. But let me go ahead and take this comment here. Mr. Amazing says Raiders always have a better offensive line than the Niners. Hate how the Niners never prioritize it. Shake my damn head. I wouldn't say always, but they 100% do prioritize offensive line a lot more than the 49ers do. I don't know what it is. I don't know if Shanahan and Lynch are allergic, Like, can they just not do it? Like, Jackson Powers Johnson was right there twice, right? Or did the Raiders pick him before the Niners' second pick?
Probably before, because it was like mid-second round.
Okay.
But still, I mean, that the Pearsall pick, I thought at that time it totally could have been.
The Niners have an abundance of riches at wide receiver, and they decided to get another.
Yep.
And then later on in the draft, another. We'll see how Dominic Puny is. We'll see how Jarrett Kingston is, and we'll see how Drake Nugent is. But it's like every single year, it's like, oh, we got like last year it was Javon Hargrave was the big signing, and the Niners just spent however many years in a row spending their first round pick on the defensive line. It's every year. Defensive line. Solomon Thomas. Before that, it was DeForest Buckner. It was Eric Armstead. Then Solomon Thomas. Then Nick Bosa. Then Javon Kinlaw. And at a certain point, you have to wonder, why is the defensive line so important? Because they have to pressure the quarterback. They have to stop the run.
Yep.
What a concept. Do you know who they have to line up against every single play? The offensive lineman. You should probably prioritize that quarterback that gets hurt damn near every year. Purdy staying healthy throughout the entire year besides that concussion was crazy. That was crazy. We all had our questions about whether or not it could be done. We said going into last year, it was like, well, the Niners should keep Trey Lance. The Niners, should do this as a backup plan because really all the quarterbacks are going to get playing time in this system because, the quarterbacks they just drop like flies. There's a reason why they drop like flies. How about instead of making it a big spectacle in the quarterback room, how about you focus on your starter, you get a decent backup, and then you put that money into the damn line. Keep them upright. Because if your starter's not playing, you're probably not going to win a Super Bowl anyway, unless you're Nick Foles. All right? It's just not happening.
Yeah. I'll say the one thing on the Raiders is, even though they've had, 3, now 4 technically regimes since the Niners have had Shanahan and John Lynch, I would say pretty much all of those regimes were very intent on focusing on the trenches. I know Reggie McKenzie, that was a key for him was, and he had that offensive line with Kalichi Osemele and Avery. And, oh yeah, I love the Powers Johnson pick, man. But, Reggie McKenzie having the offensive line with Donald Penn, Kalichi Osemele, Rodney Hudson, huge signing.
Gabe Jackson,
and Austin Howard. The right tackle kind of fluctuated, but Austin Howard, I think, was the best one. Did I say offense? I meant right tackle. And then, eventually became Gruden and Mike Mayock. And, Gruden drafted Colton Miller. And was it? No, it was, and then, Josh McDaniels takes over, and his first pick was Dylan Parham as a third rounder because they got rid of their first and second for Devontae. But I think every GM so far has been very, focused on the offensive line with this team, and obviously the defensive line. But yeah.
The offensive line dictates the entire game. They literally they don't depend like as Jim Harbaugh has said recently, they don't depend on others in order to succeed. They literally are
It's them.
yeah,
Everybody
they paved
depends
the
on
way
them
for
on
they
offense.
paved the way for all the players that we know and we buy jerseys for. They are the reasons why those players get paid. And
Yep.
that's why they're the reason why teams win football games.
Yep.
So, on to our last topic. We're not going to have any bonus topics today because we're out of time. But there was something that happened over a week ago now. I want to say it was maybe two or more weeks ago now.
Yeah, let me find the date.
Yeah. Find the date and then I'll put it up on the screen. But it's
May 18th. So
May
pretty much
18th?
exactly a month ago. May 19th,
a month ago.
2024.
Okay.
Yeah.
But Jim Otto passed away, Raider legend. You know what's funny is, I mean, it's not funny, but we were just talking about Jim Otto in our last episode about the double zeros.
Yep.
And then like soon after that, he passed away. And, I don't necessarily have a lot of opinions towards or against Jim Otto, but I do know, like, I had a bunch of Raider fan friends in high school, and I do know of at least one friend who had a Jim Otto jersey. But, I think that I've only heard good things about Jim Otto as a football legend. He was before my time, and it's never good news when you hear that somebody passed away. I don't know if you're ready to talk about like your opinions on Jim Otto, Mike. But
No, I am. I was trying to find my game day magazine that I got from the Raiders versus Giants game in Vegas last year, because one cool thing, I'm not trying to get off the subject, it revolves around Jim Otto, but one cool thing that they have is all-time everything for the Raiders, all-time players, like every player that's ever put on a Raider jersey, all-time records, all-time drafts, like every single draft class, everything, right? And I heard this, and I just wanted to confirm it, but I'm sure it's true. And I never knew this, but Jim Otto, assuming this is correct, was the first ever draft pick by the Raiders. Class in 1960, apparently. Let me try to confirm that. Let's see. Jim Otto draft. All right. Jim Otto was drafted in 1960, which just happened to be the Raiders' first year of existence. After being picked, the center would spend his entire 15-year career with the team. Over the course of his career, he played for several different coaches, including Al Davis and John Madden. I just want to know, like, the draft. Oh, you know what? I guess Wikipedia might have that. Let's see. AFL. Oh, it was the AFL draft, 1960. Yep. So, can I go to picks? Sorry.
I'm also looking on Raider.com right now. Raiders.com.
Oh, there you go. Regular draft. Does it not have numbers? Like, it doesn't have the.
Yeah, no. It's kind of weird.
Interesting. But it sounds to me like he was the first. At the very least, he was in the first draft class, but he may have been the first ever Raiders draft pick.
Yeah, it's weird because it says second and third rounds on the Raiders.com draft history. But, when I look up the 1960 draft. Oh, no. Okay, so he wasn't their first selection, but he was in that first draft. He was like the most notable pick of that draft.
Okay. Regardless, very cool. And when I think of like the Raiders, Jim Otto is definitely one of the first guys that I think of. Yeah, it's just let's see right here. He played 15 years for the Oakland Raiders and underwent more than 70 football-related operations, like on his body, including the amputation of his right leg. which I knew of this because I went to an Oakland Raiders like preseason. I don't know what I would call it, but I remember Reggie McKenzie was the GM. Maybe it was like 2013, and they had it in the parking lot for the Raiders, stadium in Oakland. And they had the stage, and all these, fans were there and players were there, and I got my hat signed by a couple players, including Shane Leckler. And Reggie McKenzie came out on stage and like said a few words, and as he was like about to speak, all the fans started chanting Super Bowl, Super Bowl, and like we hadn't even drafted Derek Carr yet or anything. It was like even I was sitting there as a kid like that's a little
Far-fetched.
Far-fetched right there. But he was all like, all right, shut the fuck up, please. We're not doing that. But I'm just kidding. But one thing I noticed was, and I'm gonna try to explain this like with visual aid or whatnot, but you had the stage and like all surrounding it was like little short fence with fans like all crowded up at the front of the fencing, right? Kind of think of like a concert. And I was towards like the left corner of where the fans could be, like a half circle around the stage, right? And I was like right in the front. That's how I got, my hat signed. I don't know where that hat is, but whatever. It was like a bunch of guys that I thought would be good and ended up not being anybody, and Shane Leckler. So I was like, hey, at least I got Shane Leckler. But at some point, like after everything on the stage was done, the fans kind of started like dispersing, and like, the players were done signing autographs, and people were kind of like looking around, like talking amongst each other. And I was like with my dad, and I remember I just kind of like looked to my left, and I don't think I knew at the time that Jim Otto had his leg amputated. But behind the stage to the left, sitting pretty much by himself in a wheelchair, was Jim Otto. And it's probably a sight I'll never forget, in part just because I was like, oh my God, that's Jim Otto. And even I like poked my dad, I'm like a middle schooler at the time or whatever. He's like, yeah, that's Jim Otto. I'm like, man, like that's crazy. Like nobody could go up to him and talk to him, but he was just sitting there kind of watching. And I guess the whole point to it is really two things. One, he's one of those guys who I could tell just loved the Raiders. And like the Raiders were as much a part of him as he was to the Raiders, And I think it like the Raiders were important to him, And the other aspect is just like literally physically how much he gave for this team, Like seeing him just sitting there, like kind of basking and like, man, look at all these fans here, as he's like, I can visually see the physical things that he gave up for this team. It always had an effect on me. And I just think he's one of the greatest ever. And yeah, I was genuinely bummed when I saw that he had passed away. Yeah, but literally one of the greatest centers of all time. And I think if film from the 1960s were popular today, I think more people and not just Raider fans would say, yeah, he's one of the top 3 centers of all time, And it's not just because he had the coolest number ever, the 00 that nobody else will ever, wear. But he was genuinely a Hall of Famer for a reason, And I remember the last time we talked about him on the last pod, I had thought that he had won the 1976 Super Bowl with the Raiders, but he retired in 74 or 75. And I was
so
a little
he never
bummed.
did?
I was like, he never did. Yeah, I was bummed. I was like, damn it, I thought he won the Super Bowl, but he retired just a year or two beforehand. So, but he did have an AFL championship. He went to Super Bowl II with the Raiders where they lost to the Packers. So, come on, he had a great career. So, yeah, all-time great Raider. And I'll just say it right here. Our plan for the bonus topics were maybe a little Mount Rushmore segment for the Niners and Raiders. And to me, Jim Otto's on the list for me. He's in the Mount Rushmore of Raiders history for sure. He's an all-timer.
Yeah. We will get to that topic another time. I'd say this is about all the time that we had for today. But, I just want to like quickly, finish off by just saying, rest in peace to Jim Otto. Anybody who, like, honestly, it's kind of crazy to think like how far the NFL has come. Like, he wasn't even drafted into the NFL. He was drafted into the AFL. And then obviously the merger happened. He gave up like his health, for his franchise, for the Raiders, and, stuck around and was one of the legends that like stayed involved with the team, or at least, things happening with the team. And, all I have is respect for guys like that, because not everybody, like, once they retire, they just kind of like, there's a lot of people that just kind of go their own way. And I do think it's cool. One of the great things about the NFL, and really about a lot of sports, I like seeing former players like visiting places where they played and like being involved with their old teams. You know what I mean? Like for me, with the San Francisco Giants, I always see like, Hunter Pence, Javier Lopez, Buster Posey being involved with the team. And then like, the Niners, like Frank Gore, works in the front office of the Niners. Like, it's just, it's awesome. I think history should be embraced. And, sounds like Jim Otto was that kind of, caliber person for the Raiders. So respect, rest in peace. And I'll let you have the final words if you have anything else that, you want to say.
Yeah. I mean, again, rest in peace to Jim Otto. Literally a legend, not only for the Raiders, but for the history of the NFL, period. And one of the all-time badasses, I think. And I did send 2 tweets from the Raiders to you, or to us technically, on the Raiders or Silver and Gold pod. If you just want to show them, they're a minute each, so it won't be too long. I think they'd be a pretty good send-off for the pod today.
Okay. All right. Are these copyrighted?
They're on Twitter, so
Okay.
the Raiders posted them.
Okay.
One thing that was cool was at the last game of the season last year, the Broncos game where the Raiders just trampled them. Jim Otto was one of the ex-players that was in the locker room with the players, like smoking cigars and stuff. I don't know if he smoked a cigar, but he was in there with them. So,
so do you want me to pull up the other video too?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I think the other one's an actual video.
Jim Otto, otherwise known as Mr. Raider, has died at 86.
One of the original Raiders died at age 86 on Sunday. Condolences to the entire Raider family for the passing of the ultimate Raider, Jim Otto.
Morning. Hey, just real quick, had the Raider passed away last night. Jim Otto played in 210 games, started 210 games, Hall of Famer, AFL champion. If you guys recall, Charles Woodson that kind of set the tone when they come in and smoke cigars with us after our last picture against the Denver Broncos on January 7th. And Jim Otto was in there with us celebrating smoke cigars and stuff like that. So obviously, Raider through and through. Give him his flowers.
Yeah. Yeah, just again, like seeing him at that whatever event that was with Reg McKenzie back in like 2012, 2013, and then him still being there, you know, at 86 months before his passing in the locker room with the team. It's like, not only was he a legend, not only was he a Hall of Famer, but he embodied being a Raider all the way. So I can appreciate that.
Yeah, man. Rest in peace. That's all the time that we have for today. We appreciate everybody for checking us out. Shout out to Joel. Shout out to Mr. Amazing. Shout out to the numbers for subscribing today and, checking us out, sharing comments. We look forward to seeing you guys on upcoming live streams. As for the bonus topics, like we said, we'll get to them on a later show. There's not going to be a lot of news coming out, in the next couple of weeks. Like, so maybe these, if you see us going live pretty soon, it's going to be less about talking about maybe what's going on and more about our opinions on things.
Yeah.
Like Mike and I have a couple ideas sort of sitting in the chamber of stuff that we want to talk about, fun little topics. So we'll definitely get to those soon. And we look forward to seeing you guys on the next show.
Peace.